Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Bold Calling. This is how to build a modern sales development team. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, and I just realized I forgot to change the date on this first slide. So ignore that. It's May, not April, but we're glad you're here. Okay, a few things just before we get started. We love your questions. Please, please, please use the Q&A portal at the bottom of your screen. Submit any questions you have at any point to our two great panelists. We will take as many of them as we can at the end. But yeah, we love to hear your thoughts and answer your questions. So please do submit them. This is being recorded and I will send it out if you want to relive the experience, or if you have a colleague who couldn't join, it will be sent to you before the end of the day tomorrow. And I would like to know, where are you in the world? Please use the chat. Let us know where you're calling in from. And just notice in the chat, you can just talk to us, the panelists, or you can talk to everybody. So please talk to everybody and let us know where you are calling in from. And in just a minute, I'll drop into the chat the registration link, but please join us next month, June 14th, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We are doing a webinar with Sendoso called Winning the Sales Game Strategies to Build a Pipeline That Sticks. I'll drop that reg link in for you there. And we got some great people, Jacksonville, Nashville, love it, Florida, fantastic. I'm in California personally. So thanks for letting us know where you're calling in from. Okay, I'd like to introduce our special guest. We have Aaron, who is the head of global business development at Wiz. He is an expert. He has been a SDR, BDR leader for years. He actually is an instructor. He teaches how to be a great SDR, BDR leader. That's why we have him here today to help us all out. He's currently at Wiz, which is one of the fastest growing B2B SaaS companies of all time, which is awesome, helping to scale their global BDR program. So we're thrilled to have him here. Welcome, Aaron. And our fearless moderator today is Nick DeSimone, who's a sales development manager at Orum. So also a ton of experience at leading SDR and BDR teams. We're so happy you're here. So I'm going to hand it over to Nick. Welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon. Glad to be here.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Not good night yet. Hopefully, maybe out there. But thanks, Laura. It is good to be here. Happy Friday, Junior, to all who are tuning in. And yeah, who better to lead the discussion on the keys to success as a new sales dev manager than Aaron here. Aaron, you built out entire BDR orgs. You do consulting on the side, teaching BDR leadership workshops across the globe, really. Just appreciate you being here to share your expertise, especially in the midst of your new role at Wiz. How have the first 30 days or so been? Keeping you busy?
Yeah, Nick, thanks so much. Really, really appreciate it. Incredibly excited to be speaking with you and the rest of our participants today. Yeah, so it's been a total roller coaster over here at Wiz. I'm about 5-6 weeks in already. Pretty fun start to the story. We actually had our company kickoff as my very first day in Punta Cana, which was just wild. It was awesome to meet people, build relationships, and we also had a little fun on the side too. So it's been great so far, and also just meeting the team. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about this as well. Through the presentation. I'm doing a listening tour right now as part of my 30, 60, 90, and really kind of sinking my teeth into the business development program that has been built and where we want to take it. So incredibly excited to be here and excited for the journey at Wiz too.
Fantastic, and congrats again. Like you said, yeah, why don't we jump into it? And we've got a good audience here. We appreciate you all taking part of your day to be here with us. If you don't mind, we'd love to understand the demographics of those tuning in a bit. Like, where are you in your sales journey, right? Where do you currently stand? Let us know. Are you in an IC, individual contributor role? Are you in a team lead position, currently managing a team of reps? Let us know, kind of help us lead the conversation in certain ways, but should be relevant to all, right, Aaron, regardless of what season of selling you're in. And to set the stage, after an SDR, BDR has a year or so under their belt, career progression in sales typically says going one of two directions, I should say, right? Either you're moving into a full cycle AE role where you take the stepping stone into your first management role, right? And something that's commonly misunderstood as first-time managers and leaders of people is that crushing it in an IC, right, in the world of prospecting and individual accountability doesn't necessarily always translate to success as a manager of processes, expectations, people, right? The skill set, the mindset, completely different. So we're going to discuss this, the different hats that you have to wear as a new sales manager, how to create buy-in for yourself as a leader, and the audit process that every sales manager should be taking with their reps on one-on-ones. So you ready to do this, Aaron?
Yeah, let's do it. And I see a couple of people in the chat there. It's awesome to see we got some BDR team leads. We got some people that are building out their teams from scratch. But yeah, would love for the audience to also put in, where you're at in your journey. We want to make sure that this is really helpful and useful for you. So that's great.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. We love the interaction. And got to say, team lead, such an integral role. It's so unique to have a player coach role, right? Rather than being all IC or all management, really valuable to the business. So typically, right, as a manager, you're building out teams. You've done this countless times, Aaron. So I'd love to pick your brain on what goes into hiring the right people, right? ICs, team leads, they're not usually in the world of recruiting, running the interviews, making those crucial personnel decisions. So how important is this sometimes overlooked aspect of first-time management?
Yeah, great question. I think I think we could take it a couple of different ways. And I think one common theme that you hear from like a sales leadership standpoint is that if you hire right, all the problems, all the challenges can kind of go away. So as somebody who's a team lead, if you're new to the role, if you're inside of a BDR or an SDR organization, having a look at your hiring practices and probably prioritizing that is one of the most important things you can do. We're actually going through this exercise even right now at Wiz, just really making sure that we double down on a couple of different things. So what I'd love to share is kind of like from a high level at the very least, and maybe we can drill into a couple of these different things, like, how do I think about kind of attacking this challenge and attacking this problem, because it's really, really difficult. Quick kind of shout out to one book that I do find is really helpful is the Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. He's the person that brought HubSpot from 0 to $100 million in ARR. He's got a lot of really good best practices. I've pulled a lot of information out of that book, as well as my own practices. And also just kind of learning from people that have done it before is obviously like the best way to do it. So from like a high level, so number one, really align on the process, right? So even kind of in this world that we're living in with some of the economic uncertainties, and there's a lot of challenges that are coming up, top talent still moves really, really fast. So you need to align on the process so that you could really move fast inside of that process. I see a lot of different BDR and SDR organizations where they kind of get tripped up, and maybe where they miss out on some top talent is the uncertainty or unclarity on that process. But also, here's the magic to that. You have to really make sure that you're aligned with your recruiters, your HR team, people in finance. There's a lot of other people that might kind of touch the process, and you need to make sure that you iron that out. Number two is define the attributes that you're looking for, right? Really important to make sure that you define what you're looking for. And I'm gonna get into the attributes here in a second. What you can do from the attributes is to start to figure out what questions you should be asking. And I like to use like behavioral interview questions. What are the questions that you should be asking that will help you to uncover those attributes? And ultimately what you're doing here, and you could even get sophisticated enough where you actually even have like a scoring system to these questions. Make sure you define what that scoring system is. But what you're doing here is you're defining for you and your organization, what is an A player, right? A lot of times people are talking about it. They're like, we only want A players. We only hire A players. Like, great. What does that mean to you? And what does that mean to the business? And then how are you going to go ahead and find these people? Another thing that I've heard through my career is for salespeople, you're only as good as the questions you ask. So that also translates to your hiring process and trying to uncover what those attributes might be. Another thing, so that would be the third. I would say the fourth here, which is really important to your hiring process. Debrief, debrief, debrief. And I'll say it again, debrief, debrief, debrief. A lot of times I'll kind of hear about some of the challenges around process or some of the challenges around hiring profile. And as we start to pick apart that process, I start to see that people aren't doing the debrief. And I would imagine, and I'm probably seeing some virtual head nods here. People are super busy, and you go into your system to give the feedback, and you just you recorded a lot of feedback, but you're not putting as much in there as you probably need to. Let's be real. So having that debrief and uncovering what were the pros, but what were the potential things that you want to tap into again is so critical. So as an account executive, after you have an awesome demo or an awesome sales call, you do a debrief with a sales engineer, you do a debrief with your BDR, same thing in the recruitment process. So that really helps to refine and also understand who else is on the panel, understand what their perspectives might be, or understand what they might have picked up on. And if each of you are very organized and you're asking good questions, your debrief is going to really, really be meaningful. And then the last is let your culture shine, be authentic, and hold a high standard. So, a little bit.
Thanks, Eric. And I see some Q&As coming in already. We are going to walk through those together at the end. So feel free to start bolstering it up, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. I think I'd like to double click into what you mentioned, being an A player. What is that profile for you in the business? You've probably hired maybe hundreds of reps onto your teams, building out those orgs. So knowing what you know now, what are your non-negotiable top attributes that you make sure you're identifying before extending that offer letter?
Yeah, you're giving me hundreds of people that I've interviewed and hired totally, and you're giving me flashbacks because one funny thing that they always ask, first question across the board, hey, Aaron, this sounds great. When can I be an account executive? You're like, oh, okay, yeah, great. That's always fun. So, what are the attributes, right, that I look for? And there's a couple of things that I'm really passionate about, making sure that I see and I find in people that are coming across the table as candidates. Number one, willingness to learn, right? We want people that want to learn, they want to grow, they want to succeed, but they're also willing to take that feedback and to absorb it, to internalize it, and to grow. So the willingness to learn is probably the number one attribute. And in that interview process, you can come up with behavioral interview questions that map back to it. Number two is grit and grind, right? Nick, I think I shared this with you. My dad worked in the shipyards of San Francisco for 15 years. Really kind of taught me what hard work meant, really making sure that you put in that effort day in and day out. And I think I kind of carry some of that with me, especially when it goes to hiring. So having the grit, having the grind, the get it done spirit, the get it done today spirit, not tomorrow spirit, I think is really critical. And then number three is a passion for your product. You should really be tapping into that. It is really hard what we do. I think the data shows that the two hardest things in all of sales are number one, negotiation, and number two is prospecting. I would say negotiation is the fun part, not the hard part. And it's all about prospecting. So you got to find people that are passionate for your product and for your company and what you're building, or else they might not really want to get rejected every single day on a cold call or whatever it might be. And then finally is people that are competitive, but also find that balance between collaboration. So I was a AE at a company called Yammer, which was kind of like a first gen Slack tool. It was an amazing product. So I taught companies how to collaborate internally. So I think that got kind of beat in my head. But if you can find that balance between healthy competition and collaborative in the people that you're hiring, you'll find a good recipe for success.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think something else that goes into uncovering these things in the interview process that maybe first-time managers struggle with a bit, I'll be honest, with myself. You don't want to put on a fake front of authority, right, to make the candidate nervous. Sometimes you see the movies or something, or it's your first time managing a team, you feel like, oh, I've got to be this, I got to have this power dynamic, right? No, be yourself. You want them to be comfortable throughout the interview process, because only then will you see their true, authentic, genuine self. And that's who you want to to judge, right? Like that's who's going to be enhancing your culture. That's who's going to be talking to prospects. So be yourself in the interview process. But moving on, great stuff, Aaron. Absolutely fantastic. I think, something we wanted to talk a lot about was that dynamic, right? From making the jump from, SDR to team lead or to that first BDR manager. And it's tough. I'll just say it. It's a weird transition, especially when you're at the same org. You go from buddy with the team, you can vent, you can joke, you're not really accountable to anyone but yourself, to being responsible for an entire team's activity, mindset, expectations, performance, everything in between, right? So I guess how do you manage that shift in dynamic and that mindset switch as a first-time manager?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think like the world that we live in right now, from like a top-down leadership standpoint, through their lens for the BDR and SDR organization, is that they see the best BDR and SDR, and their kind of knee-jerk reaction is, hey, like promote Johnny, promote Billy, promote Sally, like they're amazing at what they're doing. Give them the promotion, and all of a sudden you are a BDR 1 minute, and maybe you got promoted to senior BDR, the tools, the accounts, the day-to-day process. But all of a sudden, now you're managing, and you might even be in a situation where you're managing the team that you're actually just on. So I think there's probably two different things that we're going to talk about here. I think is like, number one is like the mindset, and a lot of the mindset that you have to bring into it. And a lot of the challenges that you faced as an individual contributor, now you're the person that needs to solve those challenges. And you have to really be cognizant when you're making that, and when you're making that jump and you're making that leap. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the 5 hats here that a leader is going to wear, and the lens that you have to look through with that. I don't know, Nick, did you want to share that slide of the, yeah. So what we have here is like the passenger versus the driver mentality, right? So, the conversation switches. 1 minute you're like, hey, manager, I don't have enough accounts. I don't have enough territory. I have 3 AEs, but 2 of those AEs are always on vacation. Like I can't hit my number. Now, all of a sudden you're the leader, and you need to take the driver mentality. You need to solve for a lot of those problems. So, really grounding yourself in this is so important. So for the driver, you have to take responsibility for the team performance, right? So at the end of the day, now you as a leader, you're taking that responsibility. You have a clear plan for driving performance. It's so easy as an individual contributor to come up with a million different excuses and a million different reasons as to why you can't hit it. But now you're the leader, all of a sudden you can't have any excuses. You're the one that's actually driving the ship. So you need to have that clear plan. Number 3, is getting creative and finding solutions. I'll tell a very brief story. I had a BDR run up to me one day, and they're like, hey, Aaron, someone didn't pay the Zoom info bill. I can't do my job. I can't, make any cold calls. Like, what do I do? And then the very next day, the same BDR ran up to me and they're like, hey, Aaron, someone didn't pay the LinkedIn bill. I don't have my LinkedIn. What do I do? I can't do my job. And I kind of looked at him. This is a true story. And I told him, I was like, look, first of all, you're talking to a guy that's made cold calls out of a payphone, out of the yellow pages at a 7-Eleven. And that's true. So you can't kind of tell me that you can't do your job, right? Without LinkedIn or these other tools. So we actually went door knocking with like a goodie bag that we put together from marketing. And we actually literally knocked on 20 doors in San Francisco. So you need to get creative. And the interesting thing here is what is old is new again, right? Like in sales, the pendulum is swinging. I feel like it's really swinging towards calls again. People want to talk to people. People are back in the office. They're kind of interested in what's out there. Calls are absolutely working again. And that's really important, that you always understand the different avenues, but getting creative. And then you have to be recognized as a great mentor, right? So the other challenge that a lot of BDRs have that are new leaders are that all of a sudden you just were an individual contributor. You might not have walked the walk quite yet. So you have to figure out a way to become a mentor, or to at least find mentors for your people so that they're able to get that. So you got to kind of navigate those waters, and then you got to drive success. I won't harp on the passenger mentality, right? But just you can't blame poor performance. You got to take responsibility. You can't wait to be told what to do. As a leader, you need to understand, and you're playing chess now, you need to understand what those potential obstacles are that are coming up. A lot of challenges out there in the world right now around the economic uncertainties. A lot of things are going on. So it's like, how do we navigate those waters? Really thinking 3 steps ahead is critical as a leader. I like this one. You don't challenge people to get creative, and you inhibit success. So really, when you're in this new role, when you're in this as a leader, you're driving.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And, I'm a little bit closer to stepping into my first management role than yourself. Obviously, it was a few roles ago, but still a little more relevant to me. And I know something that really helped me establish that, that buy-in as a mentor from my team early on in my first management role, was not just, like you said, being a mentor from the business standpoint of your actual job, but also in life. If you can find ways to be yourself, open up that level of transparency and connection and trust, to be able to link success in the workplace to achieving personal goals that they've disclosed with you outside of the workplace, that goes a heck of a long way with your relationship with the reps, adding to their motivation behind doing well at work, right? And really stepping in as not just a work mentor, but a bit of a life mentor if you can, right?
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this, but you're leading with your authentic self, and that is just one of the just the fundamental foundational things that you can do. And I think, like, a lot of times people are like, I'm a leader now, I have to be different, or there's something there. No, lead with your authentic self. Be open, be honest, be transparent, be humble. I think is another big thing. That's great.
Plus 1,000. Amazing. And this transition into your first management role, it flows right into the manager's closet. We mentioned earlier, all the hats hanging in there that need wearing as a sales manager. And you have 5 specific hats that you were telling me about. You helped train on this in your management development program. So take us through them, right? What hats are we talking about here?
Yeah, Nick, first of all, I think I'm going to steal your plus 1,000 move that you just did. I don't know what that that was good. I'm going to take that. I love that, man. Learn something new every day. So let's talk about it, right? So what are the 5 hats? I talk about the 5 hats that you have to wear, and that is leader, mentor, teacher, manager, and coach. So I'll say it again: leader, mentor, teacher, manager, and coach. The leader is a fun one, and I think that really as for everyone on this call, it's important to find your own mentors that have kind of built maybe programs in the past, in the event that you're a new leader in the BDR SDR world. For us at Wiz, what we're trying to create here is a Wiz Sales Academy, for people can kind of come in, whether that's an intern program, whether that's an account-based sales development rep, whether that's a BDR, senior BDR, whatever it might be, is creating that sales academy where you're learning the skills that are necessary in order to help you in your career. We talk about the data a lot, where you're only a BDR for 14 months, 15 months. I think the most recent piece of data was like at least 16 or 17 months. So it's like, how can we create an amazing program and an amazing experience for the BDRs and SDRs that are coming through your door, in order to get the career coaching mentorship that they need, but also to remove obstacles to help them to be successful in the role. So painting that picture as a leader for the vision is critical. The second is, being a mentor, so you can advise someone based upon your own experiences. I think that people really resonate towards that. mentorship for me has been really important. I think about people like Matt Cameron or David Hershenson are mentors of mine that have been in the BDR, SDR, sales, VP roles. And it's like, I get to learn from them, and then I can distill that information, and we can help to mentor others that are coming through the door. So without mentorship, I would even be lost, right? It's so critical. Teacher. So you got to own the sales training. Like a lot of times I see people just throwing a training to a sales enablement or to the AE or somebody else. You got to own that stuff, right? And I think you'll gain a lot of trust and respect by being a teacher that owns it. Manager, no one wants to wear the manager hat. That's always like the, hey, you're not making your dials today. Well, go buy Orum. What the heck's wrong with you? That's why, let's do it. So it's like, being the manager, you have to manage to the nitty gritty, like fast growing startup companies, the procedures or policies are just hard to understand and realize, but we're the driver, we understand it, and then we help to manage to it. And then coach, you've heard it, you've heard it, you've seen it. You could help them on, being understanding a territory plan, understanding an account plan, understanding how to do negotiation or call coaching, objection handling, etc. You're coaching them through it.
Yeah. So again, we got coach, mentor, leader, manager, and teacher. And so what, if you can even put a number on this, what percentage of a new manager's attention should be focused on each of those hats? Do you see that being an equal distribution, or some weighted a bit heavier than others?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think that you kind of have to develop the skills for those 5 different hats. And what you'll end up doing is you'll end up understanding which one you need to wear in each individual situation. So it's tough, right? I think that in the beginning, you'll probably just gravitate towards what you're good at. So challenge yourself to grow in other areas. So for example, no one really wants to be the manager hat, right? No one wants to have those difficult conversations. But go challenge yourself to learn how to have those difficult conversations. Go speak with your mentor, or maybe your cross-functional partners and people that you respect with inside of the organization, to understand how to do those things. So lean into that uncomfortableness so that you'll know and you'll be armed with it when that situation does arise. It's a situational type of thing, really. But challenge yourself where you think you might need help. And if you think about it in the context of the 5 hats, you can kind of break it down and figure out what you might be strong at, or where you might want to grow in.
Awesome. Good stuff. And just looking at the time here, we've got about 15 minutes left until we want to move into our Q&A. So what I want us to discuss is just a big part of how we put these different hats on, different ways that we establish this buy-in from our team, from leadership, from our co-management teams, right? It's the one-on-ones, right? Taking everything we discussed, they all kind of interact here. This is your time to build trust with each rep, help them reach their desired goals, which is ultimately going to help and benefit you, them, and the business, right? So there's so many things that go into an effective one-on-one, right? So many things that you can talk through. And I think they're all baked into these 15 topics that you coach on incredibly well, Aaron. So I can pull up that slide here, and I just would love to get through all of them, but if we can't, where do you start? What do you think is most important from a new management perspective?
Yeah. So great question. And I'll kind of preface it with a story. So I was like earlier in my sales development, business development, leadership career, and I was looking for a job, and I was interviewing, and I made it to the panel section of this interview. And the director of sales development at the time at this larger company, they basically said, "Hey, Aaron, what do you do if BDR is underperforming?" And it's such a big question, and it really, you need to have a good answer. And it kind of stumped me. I'm not going to lie. And I kind of had to take a deep breath and really think about this one. And later, as I was kind of reflecting on the conversation, the question, the answer that I came up with is audit the process. audit the process. And what does that mean, right? So what I've done is I've kind of bucketed it into these 15 different bullet points, and there's a lot that go into each of these, but from a high level, these are the things that I kind of look for in the one-on-one. What I would also say, Nick, is that like having a meaningful one-on-one is literally, in my opinion, the most important thing that you could do your entire week with your rep, is to have a meaningful conversation with them, truly showing that you care about their business, you care about them as a person, you care about their success. And then here's the key for everyone on the call, and I preach this one: having a mutual plan at the end of that call that you both agree upon, that you will execute by the next time you have that one-on-one. I think that is the critical piece, and that leads into accountability, that leads into trust, that leads into almost everything that you do. So having that mutual plan is so important. So we can unpack this a little bit from a nitty gritty, just really looking into your activities per day, per week, review of the metrics. One pro tip here: get your reps to show up on that meeting with their numbers, having already thought about it. That will help them to take ownership of their business and take ownership of their day-to-day. Number two is like a diversity of activities. So it's like, are they only making cold calls? Are they only using LinkedIn? Are you truly omni-channel? Are you really kind of using all the different avenues of prospecting? I've had reps in the past that are like, everything you ask them to do, they will absolutely do it. But then you start to uncover it a little bit, and you have to understand if they're being robotic, right? There is an art to sales. And it is still very much true in the BDR world, even though we can be so metrics driven. Messaging, calls, and scripts. So really, are you tapping into the messages? Are you actually getting into the weeds and helping them to craft messaging that actually works? There's a lot of different philosophies that are out there. I like customization and personalization of messages. I think is critical. Like, I think I've heard this, or we've all heard this, like it's the small things in life that all add up. So are they doing the small things, like confirming the calls? Are they actually having a meaningful conversation with the account executive before and after the demo that you set up? Are they going after the right buyer personas? Are they working enough suspects per account? Are they working the right accounts? So we're talking a lot about this currently, just really making sure that you give people the clarity that they need inside of their territory management, so that you can remove obstacles that could be obvious to help them to get to their number. Are you working the right number of accounts? So much, like if you go into a lot of these different blogs or books, or there's so many conversations on LinkedIn about the right number of accounts. Doesn't make sense. Having that clarity is critical. I mean, again, I was an AE at Yammer. Collaboration with the AEs, collaboration. It's just so important. Are they building strong relationships with their internal partners? You got to tap into that. Time management, obviously, discipline, motivation. So many tools that are out there helping them to understand how they all fit together. Territory, getting creative. We already spoke to this. And then at the end of the day, sales is really hard, right? Like, are you motivating them and inspiring them? Are they motivated? Are they actually showing up and putting in the effort? I think is critical.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I think just going back to one of the first things you said, really about coming prepared, goes both ways, right? A lot of the times we put a lot of the pressure on ourselves as the managers to come in, have the agenda set, have all the talking points, data, dashboards, all that up, ready to go. Listen, it's a two-way street. You need to hold your reps accountable to come prepared with some of these things as well. Have them come with the call recordings, the questions to ask, the data, the dashboards, all of that to each and every call. And something that I actually implemented rather recently. Hopefully this is helpful to those who maybe don't have this in place, is some extra structure around one-on-ones. To the point where we have like shared Google Docs, right, baked into each calendar invite for every one-on-one. And it's just an ongoing list, right, by date. What are the points of discussion that we're going to touch on? What action items did we agree upon, so that every single time you can come back to the sheet, we can talk about it the next week, like, hey, what progress did we make here? as well as any links, right? You're always making a million different dashboards as a sales manager, it feels right. So as you come up with these different resources, this is a great place to always have links, to them. So your reps never have an excuse like, oh, I don't know where that is. It's like, no, it's in our shared doc, right? So it's where everything is. So hopefully that's helpful maybe for some people who just kind of show up to their one-on-ones and hope they can have a conversation, right? That preparation, having that agenda, all of that documented, it's awesome. It makes such a big difference.
And Nick, too, follow-up question there. Like, and I love those pro tips, and it's something that we practice as well. Like in that document, do you have like the action items that come out of the one-on-one?
Exactly. We have the action items as little check boxes, right? So we can check them off together. And sometimes the rep will actually check it off throughout the week themselves, and we'll come together. It's already there. It's like, awesome. Okay, talk me through that. Like, how'd that go? Great follow-up for sure.
And then do you review those action items the next week for the action items that you had the previous week? There you go. And that is the magic moment right there, because you're building that trust and accountability, and you're trusting but verifying the work that you guys have done. So that's awesome, Nick.
Awesome. Exactly. And so I know we did kind of a high level overview, which we appreciate that, Aaron. I'm curious, speaking to the audience here for a moment, any of these topics here that you'd really like to kind of double click into, right? Let us know. We want this geared toward y'all. If there's a certain thing in here that you'd like for us to discuss more, almost maybe like a pre-Q&A in a way, right? You can answer a quick question about something, throw in the chat. We'll see what we can do, and hopefully you can take that feedback to your role and make a difference. But if not, right, I think maybe as we wait, I personally would like to double click into the collaboration with AEs. I think this is such a key aspect to finding success as an SDR. I think it can depend on what kind of model you have in place too, right? There's pods where, a certain set of AEs and set of SDRs work together on a certain set of accounts. You've got one-to-one relationships. Sometimes you have everything, available to everyone. So it does depend, but speaking to situations where you can collaborate with AEs, what are some of, I guess, your best practices on how to best collaborate with AEs?
Yeah, great question. So, Nick, I think I was telling you at the beginning of this call as well, I'm doing, as part of my 30-60-90, I'm doing a listening tour, and I'm speaking to our cross-functional business partners, our AE leadership, as well as our BDRs. I've collected over maybe 400 tidbits of feedback. Truly, I went through and I counted them all, because I think like that's an important part of the conversation I had with my leadership team. And this topic absolutely came up, and I think that it comes up with a lot of people. Everyone says like, oh, of course, collaboration is really important between the BDRs and account executives. But I guess like what we as leaders need to do, wearing the driver hat, is really defining what that all means. Like, what does the relationship look like? What does it feel like? What is the cadences? So a couple of things that you can do is, highlight best practices, highlight the metrics that you are holding your reps accountable to, even highlighting the comp on how, like, it's important that the AEs also understand how your BDRs and SDRs are comped. What is the day-to-day process? What accounts are you going after? And I think like the magic happens after the AEs and BDRs leave, and you should actually do a formalized training, like put together a deck, talk to your AEs, talk to your BDRs. What are all the pain points that are out there? Put a formalized deck together and actually sit down and train your AE population and your BDR population. And so that you're all having the same kind of conversations. That's how you achieve scalability. That's how you end up being able to move faster. So give them the tools that they need in order to be successful. I think a couple of low-hanging fruit there is, are they doing debriefs after the call? I think we mentioned this. It's a magic moment for the BDRs to uncover where their AE's head is at in terms of like that actual account plan and the next steps that are there. Are the, going back to the small stuff, are the BDRs confirming the calls the day before, but are they giving them the context that they need when the AE is walking into the call? Like the small stuff like that is really important for us as leaders to go document everything. Like what exactly do you want the BDRs and AEs to do? And what does this relationship look like? So good call out there.
Yeah, how many times, if there's any SDRs or previous SDRs in the line, man, how many times do you walk into an account that has a closed loss stop and there's no notes, there's no context of who was with, what was said, what happened? It's like, oh, like that's just a waste of money, basically, to make that meeting happen. So great stuff. And I think having an AE SDR service level agreement, that's what we call it at Orum. We have that in place. It's documented, the expectations between AE, SDR, what's expected of each, who's responsible for what parties, what fields in Salesforce. I mean, we get as specific as it gets, and that goes such a long way. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, Aaron. Okay, so we do have a question came in, I think, before moving on to our final topic and then into our Q&A. I want to honor what I said a couple minutes ago. So Malcolm, thank you for your comment here. Notice motivation appears twice there. Does motivation include mental health and maintaining a positive mental state?
Yeah. So let's talk about like mental health and positive mental state. This is maybe my Berkeley, California coming out here. It's really important, like no burnout, right? Like what we do is really hard. And actually, I believe it was a Topo stat that showed that the two hardest things in sales are negotiation and then prospecting. So what the BDRs and SDRs typically do is one of the hardest things in one of the hardest professions that are out there. So I'm a big advocate of really making sure that even down to the day-to-day, are you taking the breaks that you need? Are you, a lot of people are still working from home, or it might be hybrid. So you can have so many Zoom meetings in a day. I like to call them mindful moments. Are you taking a mindful moment for yourself throughout the day? That should hopefully kind of recharge the batteries and really kind of help to stay motivated. I also tell people to make sure that they're taking the holidays, they're taking the vacations. Plan, right? Your quota doesn't sleep. Sales doesn't sleep. Plan ahead so that you could also help yourself and help your mental kind of health. Because again, sales is really hard. And making sure that you're working with your peers and you're working with your leaders to do that. So there's a few things that are in there, but I think like planning and making sure that you're taking the breaks necessary are two things that you can do to help yourself and help your team.
Awesome. Amazing. Yeah. And something that I like to do for every rep that hits, quota every quarter is I'll schedule a, 20, 30-minute block of time on maybe the Thursday of that last week of the quarter. No work talk, right? We're just hanging out. We're continuing to improve that connection together, encouraging, motivating, right? For their performance. And then I say, you know what? Hey, tomorrow's Friday, last day of the quarter. You exceed your goal by X%, like take the day off, right? Take the day off, enjoy yourself, come back refreshed, ready to go on Monday. Those little things, it does matter. And as a manager, you got to remember, you got to do that for yourself too sometimes. So don't forget that.
Yeah. I love all that, Nick. That's so good. And I like how you're attaching spiffs and sales performance to also taking time. I think that became very popular during COVID. And I think it's still popular today. And I think that it's a great lever to pull as a leader to give them time. I'll also say one other thing. I love to make pizzas from scratch. It's just a little bit of a hobby that I have, and I've actually done pizza parties with my team. I'll invite them over to my house. They'll meet my wife, my dog Rufus, my little one Zia, and actually, like, it's pretty cool and magical when you cook together with your team and you have fun on that level. So really, again, being authentic, connecting, building the relationships, all help in that journey that a BDR and SDR is going through, and all help, in my opinion, with performance to the end of week, days, or months.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, we are at the 15-minute mark. I think there's one more thing that maybe we can take just a minute or two on, Aaron. But I think it's really important. It's something you brought up to me earlier this month about going out of your way as a first-time manager to commit to your own personal growth and development, right? Stepping into that role for the first time, it's a lot. You're pulled in a ton of different directions, and it's easy to direct all of your attention to other people, other projects, and forget about yourself, right? So just real quick, right? Those making that transition for the first time, what steps would you recommend for them to really lean into their own personal growth from the start?
Yeah, great question. And I think I got a couple of different things here. We talked a little bit about this, but like mentorship is really important. Like finding a good mentor for yourself, working with others that you trust and respect in your organization to find a mentor. Maybe it's internally, or maybe even have two mentors, one internally and one externally, to kind of help for you to see the bigger picture, and also somebody who cares about you enough to actually give you real, true, good guidance and feedback on areas that you can grow. There's a lot of small things that you can do, right? So like webinars like this, really kind of seeing what's out there, learning, kind of growing. There's a lot of conferences too for the BDR and SDR world. I think that I learned a lot along the way, and I took a lot from those conferences into my own kind of practices when I'm building a BDR and SDR program. There's a lot of good books that are out there. Also informational interviews, coffee with other people that have done it before. So try to find somebody that is maybe 3 or 4 years, quote unquote, ahead of you, and then like really meeting them, kind of picking their brain and trying to understand where they're at. That will help you to get ahead of some of those things. And then also, what I would say is there's also a lot of other classes and boot camps that are out there that kind of teach this stuff. So really kind of exposing yourself to that is a great way. And also there's a lot of community of BDR and SDR groups that are being built. Orum, I think, is doing an amazing job with that already. And connecting yourself to those community to help you to get answers to questions that you might have faster.
Amazing insights from you, Aaron. Thank you so much. I wish this webinar happened years ago, before my first management role. So valuable, and the value doesn't stop here, right? So we have a quick poll that should pop up on your screens in the next few seconds here. If you have any interest in learning more about Wiz or Orum, let us know in that poll. So thank you again. And so now for our Q&A, right? We've got a ton coming in. We've got plenty of time here to get to as many as we can. I'm going to try and start from what I received near the top, but it's kind of all just jumbled here. So going back to hiring, great question from Donna. Can you share some of your behavioral questions to uncover those attributes that we were discussing?
Yeah, so I like doing the behavioral interview questions of starting with, tell me about a time when. I think you're going to learn a lot from that when it comes to, and I think I might have saw that question in the chat. Tell me about a time when you wanted something so bad and what you did to get it. I think kind of shows initiative. It shows what the grit might be, but you could also potentially unpack a couple of things that are in there around competition. So like what I would say to that is, you can even do a quick Google search on behavioral interview questions. A lot of them might be kind of cheesy that you see on there, but it's about finding the ones that resonate with you. And then you as a hiring manager, take ownership of that question. So it's in your own words and you feel it and you believe it. But yeah, I like the tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when you had a prospect into the hardest account and what you did to break into it. Tell me about a time when you just felt down and out and you had to make, another 50, 60 dials. Tell me about a time when you had a professional relationship with somebody that might have not been going that well and what you did to kind of like turn it back around. Tell me about a time when is probably one of my favorite.
Got it. Beautiful. So good. So good. I think any questions that really gets to the root of the why behind their motivation as well. If you can identify something that's not just a fluff and motivation factor, something a little deeper, just ingrained in them that it's going to keep them accountable to wake up every single day and get after it and be consistent. And then Donna, to give you like a specific question that I like, you might hate it, but I like asking, hey, in your eyes, what separates the best SDRs from the average SDRs, right? If you get a very broad, high level answer, you can tell that they might not actually know what it takes. But if they dig in, they start getting passionate, they're telling you all the things that are important to you, you've probably got a keeper. Okay, cool. Another great question from Brian. This is such a good question. I love it. So going back to like onboarding, when onboarding new SDRs, there's so many different places you can start, right? Aaron, would you recommend starting with your product offering, right? Getting up to, not up to date, can't think of what I'm trying to say, but getting familiar with the product and its fit in the market, or is sales process and selling skills like the first thing to double click into?
That's a good question. So what I would say is that, and I've seen this at various places, you might have like a revenue or a sales onboarding. You might have like an HR standardized company onboarding. And then the way I like to think about it is, okay, let's imagine the journey that a BDR SDR is going through, and we have 1 week or 2 weeks. Let's just call it 1 week. That means that we've got 25, 30 hours in order to get them as prepared as possible to be successful in the role. So if you break that down to hour, what are the 25 exercises that you want them to go through? And again, that's a lot, right? So they're automatically going to be drinking out of the fire hose. So I think that you're asking a really good question. It's like, what do you want to start with and what do you want to end with? Is probably, really important, right? Like, what is the taste in their mouth going to be at the end of this week, and how are they going to use that to carry into the next week? So in the beginning, I like to align around process, and I like to align around comp. It's like, hey guys, like, this is how you're going to make money, and this is how you crush your number, and this is what the process is. And then my expectations and where I want you to go, and do you agree that it is 100% to your number, 130% to your number? Let's agree, right? So now that I've got that agreement almost in the beginning of the onboarding, we can use that as kind of like our guiding light and guiding principle throughout the entire onboarding. So you'll have different emphasis on different things. That immediately dovetails into career path. So really understanding where they want to go in their career path is also going to be critical. And then what I like to end on is culture. Culture, right? Because like, that's what's going to, we're going to be faced with challenges. And if you feel the culture and you understand it, you're going to let that permeate and resonate, and it's going to help you to guide you once you get those challenges. Because hey, the reality of the situation is you're going to forget it all, and then you're going to have a phone in your hand that next Monday morning and be like, oh my God, what do I need to do? So it's really important to build that trust. And I think you can do it at the end there around culture. So I don't know if that answered it, but.
He loves it. He loves it. Very detailed. Awesome. Great question, Brian. And then a meeting. Yeah, would love a meeting from Michaela. No, a question from Michaela here. Going back to best practices around one-on-ones, right? How many meetings do you plan with the SDRs per week? Not just one-on-ones, but team calls, maybe training specific calls, one-on-ones. And when do you review individual KPIs? I'm assuming by that we'll dive into that second part. So first part, how do you structure your week as far as your interactions with your reps?
Yeah, a question that I always ask people when they're interviewing for a BDR leader job is, how do you operationalize your business? And I think that you need to have a really good grounding there, and you need to have a good answer there. So as a frontline leader or as a leader, the way that I operationalize my business is I would do an all hands every month, right? And you're aligning around organization, company, topics, as well as like my different regions and managers might speak. From a week to week basis, team meeting Monday morning, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, quick stand-ups. Let's say, hey, how's everyone doing? Let's go. Are you motivating? Like talking about different topics even, I think, is really healthy. And then an accountability check on a Friday. And then I'm aligning and defining and organizing myself in the one-on-one with the rep. Again, that's the most important meeting that you could have with your rep, because you're leaving with that mutual plan with that rep. And I like that as an hour. I look at calendars sometimes. I'm like, I see a 30-minute one-on-one with a rep that might be struggling. I just don't understand how you can have a meaningful conversation with a rep that is not doing well for 30 minutes and uncover what the actual challenges might be. And then in the nitty-gritty of the one-on-one, building rapport in the beginning, really checking in, like really caring about your employee is like so important. But then also, okay, like having that check-in, understanding where their head's at, but then checking their day-to-day and week-to-week metrics in that one-on-one, I think is critical as well, because that gives you the situational awareness as to where they are at per the week, per the month, per the quarter, and that will change the conversation.
That's, oh man, the last part really hit me, because I've had situations where, you know, on one-on-ones, I'm a pretty personal guy, right? But sometimes I have one-on-ones scheduled at, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something, right? On my busiest day, and I just come in mentally drained, and I fail to bring that personal aspect, that rapport building in the beginning, right? And just kind of go straight into it, a little less energy than the rest of the reps get, right? And I'll be honest here, right? Like I've been called out on that before, and it's a big learning experience for me as a manager to know, you know, how to structure my own one-on-ones, right, with people so that they can get the best version of myself, right? And guess what? After making those changes, not only did our relationship improve, but that rep's performance improved, right? Because when you feel acknowledged, recognized, appreciated, guess what? You're going to work harder for that manager and the business. So that's a great point I wanted to make sure was hit hard home.
Good.
No.
Yeah, do the hard things first. Do the hard things first, right? And I think as a leader, really getting ahead of it is so critical.
Beautiful. Okay, so I know we have 3 minutes left here. Let me see if I can find like a quick and easy question, perhaps. Okay, so this might be a little longer than the question. Maybe we try and keep it brief. So I think what Michaela here is trying to get to, when you're trying to refine your go-to-market strategy, how to get SDRs to help with building their own playbook, right? So she feels like there's a lot of struggle there when the guidelines aren't 100% clear. And maybe that's part of the answer, right? Is to make those guidelines more clear. But you know, they're key people to help redefine that go-to-market strategy. So how do you involve your reps when perhaps, you know, redefining a sales playbook?
Yeah, big one.
Sorry.
So I did my listening tour. So now I have all the problems and challenges. From there, work with your management team to prioritize all those challenges. Now that you know what they are and you have the top 10, let's call it, on your go-to-market strategy and moving forward, I start to figure out, okay, problem number 2, BDR number 1 is really good at that. I'm actually going to partner with them to get their feedback and to try to get them to help. What that's going to do is that's going to get their buy-in, and we're doing it together. Problem number 6 on the list, I'm now working with my SDR who's been here for like a year and a half. And now same thing. I'm collaborating, I'm understanding what the problems might be and coming up with solutions and then rolling out those solutions. And that's how I do it. Kind of a hub and spoke model almost, so to speak. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Aaron. And thank you all for the fantastic questions. Really, all really good questions. Thank you again for joining, Aaron. Laura, happy to pass it over to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Great questions. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you can join us next month as well. And just to reiterate, we will be sending out this recording tomorrow. So if you have colleagues that you think this would be useful, please pass it on. But yeah, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Nick, for all the great insights and advice. Is very cool. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world. Thanks so much.
Thanks all.
Everybody,
Thanks,
take care.